After 12 shocking hours of abuse, she took the judge's seat. Their smirks disappeared forever. The courtroom was electric with tension. Emily Johnson stood silently, a single mother from the wrong side of the tracks, her heart racing as she prepared for the day she had dreamed of for years. 12 grueling hours had passed, each dragging like a weight on her shoulders, and all around her, eyes flashed with judgment. This was her moment to step into a world that had always felt just out of reach, where privilege and power lined the walls of the courthouse. And now, here she was, ready to fight for justice, not just for herself but for those who couldn't. The battered woman in the stand had become a symbol of survival to Emily. She could feel each tear, each tremor of fear as the opposing attorney tore apart the victim's credibility with merciless precision. Emily's heart ached, a tightness clutching her chest as she witnessed the subtle cruelty of power in action. She had faced her own demons, battled through dark moments alone, and felt the anger boil inside her as she watched the relentless cross-examination. Those smug smirks, the chuckles of her colleagues, they echoed in her ears as she found her voice. This isn't right, she thought. Someone has to stand up. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a fierce determination, Emily approached her father, the judge, her adopted resolve hardening her stance. The whispers coursed through the room like a cold wind as she boldly moved forward, her heart pounding in her ears. There was no backing down now. She lifted her chin, shaking off the memories of rejection and shame that had once clouded her spirit. This wasn't just about a father's title, it was about challenging an entire system. With a swift motion, she claimed his seat. Gasps erupted, it felt like all eyes were on her, the weight of 100 doubts backing their skepticism. As she settled into the judge's seat, Emily could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The murmurs quieted, the glances turned more assessing. For the first time, she felt the power that came with her dreams, the fire of justice igniting her veins. The courtroom transformed around her, it became a stage for accountability, a platform where she could amplify the voices drowned out by wealth and influence. The room that had felt so unfriendly just moments ago now brimmed with possibility. Her audacious move rippled through every corner of the town, igniting conversations about merit, loyalty, and the fight against a status quo that had long oppressed the vulnerable. Emily became an unexpected symbol of hope. She could feel the collective spirit of the community stirring, the whispers morphing into a rallying cry for justice. But as the buzz of speculation surrounded her, Emily knew she had only begun her fight, not just for the woman on the stand, but for the many like her who had lost their voices in the echo chambers of privilege. The question lingered in the air: would the community stand with her against the odds? Or would they retreat, siding with the familiar comforts of the powerful? Uncertainty loomed like a distant storm. And beneath it all, Emily felt a deep resolve burning within her, a flicker of light strong enough to challenge even the darkest corners of her past. What would happen next? The courtroom, once a place of derision, now held promise, and the next chapter was ready to unfold. Emily's heart beat like a drum, each thud echoing the importance of her newfound role. She couldn't shake the feeling that the eyes of the universe were upon her. The weight of the judge's robe felt both like a cloak of authority and a burden of expectation. Would she be able to uphold the trust placed in her? As she surveyed the room, she noticed the opposition's attorney, a man whose confidence was as thick as the lawyer's books lining the shelves. His expression had shifted from amusement to irritation. Good, she thought he should know this wouldn't be easy. With a deep breath, Emily cleared her throat. The microphone in front of her barely needed adjusting. Let's get started. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. It was the voice of a woman reclaiming not just a title but dignity. She turned to the witness stand and fixed her gaze upon the woman who had endured so much. She was no longer just a victim, she was a warrior. "Please state your name for the court," Emily said, knowing her words were a bridge not just to the testimony but to the very heart of the matter. "My name is Sarah," replied the woman, a mix of pain and gratitude etched on her face. Emily could see the fight in her eyes, and it fueled her OWN.as the questions flowed. Emily felt a new sense of purpose. Each answer from Sarah chipped away at the facade the opposing side had built. With every admission of pain, every recounting of abuse, the room began to shift. Whispers grew softer, replaced by the silent acknowledgement of truth. Emily was struck by how powerful honesty could be. After a particularly emotional exchange, Emily's eyes caught the gaze of a young girl in the back of the courtroom, perhaps no older than 8. She clutched a teddy bear, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. Emily's heart melted. She thought of the future, the cycles that could be broken with each small victory. "Miss Sarah, can you tell us how you feel today?" Emily asked softly, her tone rising slightly as she leaned in, truly wanting to know. "I feel seen," Sarah said, tears welling in her eyes. "For the first time, I feel like my story matters." The courtroom held its breath. Emily's spirit soared. This was what it was about: empowerment through vulnerability. But as the testimony progressed, Emily sensed a shift in tension again. The opposing attorney, cornered and desperate, launched into a barrage of insinuations, twisting Sarah's story into something sinister. Emily braced herself, anger bubbling up within her. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment when she would have to wield both the pen and the gavel. "Objection!" she called out, surprising even herself. The words came from a place deep inside, a part of her that was no longer willing to stay silent. The judge stared in disbelief. "You are not allowed to issue objections," he reminded her, but Emily felt a rush of empowerment that made her defy what had been drilled into her mind all her life. "But I am," she insisted, her voice steady. "This is a trial for justice." Silence engulfed the room, the air heavy with uncertainty. Emily could feel the eyes of the community on her, and she knew this wasn't just about the trial. It was about the fight for every woman, every child who had ever faced injustice. "Why are we protecting the perpetrator?" she continued, finding strength in her conviction. As the tension mounted, a new question lingered in the air. Was she prepared for the fallout of her defiance? And what would happen when the truth began to unravel in its full magnitude? Emily sensed the storm approaching, not only inside the courtroom but within her own heart. The battle for justice had only just begun. Emily's heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears as she faced the stony expression surrounding her. The silence was thick, a palpable tension that hung over the room. She had taken a bold step, and in that moment, every ounce of fear was swept away by a fierce determination. This wasn't just about her, it was about Sarah and countless others whose voices had been silenced for too long. The judge, still recovering from her unexpected interjection, shifted uncomfortably. Emily held her gaze, undeterred. She could sense the weight of expectation from the audience, a sea of faces reflecting hope, anger, and questions about what would happen next. She took a deep breath and gestured for the opposing attorney to present his case. "Your Honor," the attorney began, regaining his composure, "what we have here is an attempt at emotional manipulation. Ms. Sarah is merely capitalizing on the weakness of words to sway this court." Emily felt the anger rise again, but she pushed it down. It wasn't about emotion, it was about truth. She turned to Sarah, who sat upright with a new edge of defiance in her demeanor. "Sarah, we heard about your story. But tell the truth. You aren't manipulating anyone, are you?" Emily pressed, her voice soft but firm. "No. It's my story, and it's real," Sarah affirmed, her voice trembling but full of resolve. The sincerity in her tone washed over the room like a soothing balm, driving away the doubt that the other attorney had tried to plant. Emily could see the jurors leaning forward, intrigued. She could feel the tide turning, but she needed to keep the momentum. What happened to you was not just a part of your life, it was a crime. A crime that should not be dismissed with insults and pity. With that, she directed her attention back to the opposition. So, Mr. Defense Attorney, if you believe what you say, then why hide behind your egotistical claims? Show us the evidence that contradicts Sarah's truth. There was a momentary silence as the attorney raised an eyebrow, unnerved by the challenge. Emily's conviction emanated like a beacon in the dimly lit room, illuminating the pain and the strength in Sarah's story. Flashes of memory invaded Emily's mind. Images of the young girl in the back, the weight of her teddy bear, and the pure honesty in Sarah's eyes were more powerful than any legal jargon. She had to push through, no matter the risk. As the opposing attorney stammered, fumbling for words, Emily seized the opportunity. You want to label this as emotional manipulation? Let us talk about the real manipulation, the systems that allow predators to thrive while victims are left to suffer in silence. The room buzzed with whispered reactions. Emily had struck a nerve. When she turned to address the crowd, her voice rose in intensity. We all have a part to play. Our silence allows these atrocities to continue. What lives are you willing to stand for? Are we going to let fear control us? A powerful murmur spread through the audience, a collective hint of agreement. Emily felt renewed energy coursing through her veins. She locked eyes with the little girl in the back again, and in that moment, she felt a promise to create a better world echo between them, a place where hope could thrive, free from the shackles of fear. But just as she thought she could gain full control of the narrative, the opposing attorney launched a surprise attack, presenting a character witness who had a history of their own darkness to reveal about Sarah. The air in the room shifted again. Emily inhaled sharply, her stomach twisting. How could they be so ruthless? As the courtroom braced for the fallout of this revelation, she understood that the battle was far from over. The real question now lingered in her mind: would the truth hold firm against the storm of lies that was about to unleash itself? Could she shield Sarah from the waves of doubt that threatened to drown everything they had fought for? The witness stepped up, his features partly hidden under the brim of a worn baseball cap. The second he opened his mouth, the courtroom seemed to shrink. Emily felt every eye on her, all breaths held in anticipation. She glanced at Sarah, who seemed to shrink back into her chair, vulnerability etched on her face. This was how it was supposed to go. Your Honor, the witness began, his voice gravelly, I know Sarah. She is not the innocent victim she pretends to be. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Emily's heart sank. The words hung heavily in the air, twisting what had been a moment of strength into a threadbare tapestry of fear. Would this man's words be enough to sway those who still held the scales of justice in their hands? Tell us more about this relationship, the attorney prompted, a smirk creeping onto his face. The witness leaned forward, and Emily barely could hold back a flinch. She was always getting into trouble. Breaking the rules. You'd think she'd have learned her lesson after everything she put her family through. Emily's blood boiled. How dare he? The room was swirling with murmurs of disbelief. How could they allow this man to paint Sarah as the villain? Then, with a sudden surge of courage, Emily pushed herself to her feet. Objection. The judge looked taken aback but nodded. Sustained. This testimony is irrelevant to the case at hand. Yes, irrelevant. Shouted Sarah unexpectedly, her voice ringing clear. It seemed to buoy Emily's spirits, urging her forward. She locked eyes with Sarah, whose fierce spirit was flickering back to life. Emily didn't just see Sarah, she saw every victim who had been brushed aside, every story lost in shadows of doubt. This is her story. It's not just a footnote in someone else's agenda. This is evolution. This is survival. The audience nodded, a wave of agreement pulsing through them like a heartbeat. Emily took that moment to fully embrace the energy building in the room. Sarah has fought too long, too hard, to let anyone dictate her worth or her truth, Emily proclaimed. The narrative doesn't belong to the witness who is merely a fragment of her past, it belongs to her, and to all of us who refuse to hide from our truths." The opposing attorney appeared flustered, and visibly, cracks were starting to show in his strategy. But the witness swallowed hard and began again. "You don't know what she was like." "Stop!" Emily interjected again, this time almost shouting. "You don't get to define her. She's the one who lives with those scars, not you. You've had your moment to speak, now let her tell her own story." The judge seemed to consider this carefully. Emily knew time was running short, and she had to act. "We can either allow those who've suffered to reclaim their voice, or we can let fear speak for them." She pointed to Sarah, and the room grew quiet enough to hear a pin drop. "Sarah deserves to be heard." Sarah rose slowly, eyes wide and glistening, fear temporarily subsumed by a burst of determination. That singular moment felt electric, a turning point. But just as Sarah began to approach the stand, the opposing attorney's smirk returned as he leaned in closer, braced to strike again. Emily's stomach tightened. What was he about to say? She could sense the darkness creeping back into the room, the weight of unknown truths threatening to crash down and envelop them. As the air thickened with tension, every heartbeat in the courtroom seemed to echo a question: who truly controlled the narrative? Would they allow the past to dictate Sarah's future? With uncertainty swirling, Emily's mind raced. Could they shield Sarah from yet another storm? And as Sarah steadied herself at the stand, what would her voice echo into the silence that fell between them? Emily couldn't breathe. The silence felt oppressive, thick as fog. She watched Sarah sway slightly, fighting against the pull of fear that threatened to bring her crashing down again. They'd come too far for that now. "Take your time, Sarah," Emily murmured, though she doubted her voice could reach her friend over the pounding in her ears. The courtroom appeared frozen, as if the world outside had paused, holding its breath for what was to come. With each step, Sarah seemed to carve a path through the weight of judgment. With courage that shimmered in her hesitant smile, she finally took her place at the stand, gripping the edge like it was a lifeline. The opposing attorney's eyes flickered, surprise cloaked beneath layers of arrogance. He hadn't expected this. "Sarah," the judge prompted softly, encouragingly, "please share your story." Taking a deep breath, she began, her voice just above a whisper. I never wanted to be seen as someone flawed. But sometimes, you get lost in the dark, and it feels like there's no way out." A collective sigh rippled through the spectators as they leaned closer, drawn in by her honesty. Emily felt the warmth of shared pain surrounding them, softly replacing the tension that had lingered mercilessly. "Everyone has their version of the truth," Sarah continued, her voice growing steadier. "I remember being young, thinking that if I just tried harder to be perfect it would make everything better. But it never did. They only saw what they wanted to see." The walls of the courtroom began to melt away, the energy in the room transformed from a battlefield into a sanctuary. Emily could see a few of the jurors exchange glances, as if they were finally beginning to see the real Sarah, who she was beyond the damaged girl they had been told about. "And yes, I made mistakes," Sarah acknowledged, her gaze unwavering. "But that doesn't mean I'm broken. It means I'm human. I fought against a world that tried to silence me, and I refuse to be defined by my past." Applause erupted from the gallery, startling everyone. Emily's heart soared. The battle wasn't over, but it felt like the tide was shifting. She looked at Sarah, fire burning bright in her eyes now. Sarah's vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was a strength that filled the room, igniting hope instead of fear. The opposing attorney shifted in his seat, his confidence wobbling. "This is a courtroom, not a therapy session, Sarah," he interjected, desperation creeping into his tone. Something inside Emily snapped. "Your Honor," she blurted with ferocity, "that's exactly the problem. They want to dismiss her story as therapy instead of acknowledging the truth behind it. You can't put someone's healing in a box and avoid the impact it has on their life." The audience sprang to life, their agreement manifesting as murmurs and nods. The judge's brow furrowed, evidently weighing the implications of this mounting fervor. "Sarah," he said gently, trying to regain composure. "What do you want to leave this court with?" Her lips quivered as she met his gaze. "I want to show people that they can reclaim their lives. I want to tell those in darkness that they can find their way out." Emily felt tears sting her eyes. In that moment, Sarah was illuminating the shadows for herself and for countless others who needed to hear this vibrant truth. But just before the judge could respond, a voice rose from the back, a whisper that grew louder. "You think this changes anything?" Everyone turned toward the source. The witness from before stepped tentatively forward, his baseball cap still pulled low. "I was just telling the truth." The courtroom went silent again, the air charged with uncertainty. Emily's heart thundered in her chest. What would come next? As Sarah steeled herself, Emily realized they were about to confront not just the witness, but the very core of Sarah's past. Would they be ready for whatever came? And could Sarah find the strength to face this new challenge head-on? Emily's stomach twisted as she watched the witness step forward. The tension felt electric, dancing wildly in the stillness. Sarah, on the stand, held her breath, her fingers clutching the edge tightly enough that her knuckles turned white. The judge's voice was calm but firm. "Please state your name." "Jake." He hesitated, his gaze darting around the room, searching for something, maybe approval. "Jake Thompson." The name hung in the air, thick with memories. Emily remembered the way he had always carried himself, confident, almost cocky back then. Everything about him now felt like a mask slipping. She couldn't help but notice how his fingers trembled slightly, like a loose string about to unravel. "Jake," the judge reiterated gently, "do you have something to add to Sarah's testimony?" The smirk that lingered on Jake's face was unsettling. "I just don't think finding yourself is as easy as she makes it sound. People don't really change, do they?" Gasps arose from the audience, but Emily felt cold steel settle in her chest. Knowing that he would try to undermine everything Sarah had built was no surprise. Yet that didn't lessen the sting. Emily glanced at Sarah, watching her face carefully, spurred on by the crowd's reaction. The judge said, "This is not the time to." Jake cut him off. "I'm just saying what everyone knows. She might act brave up there, but we all saw her fall apart." "No." Sarah's voice broke through sharply. "That isn't the truth. I fell apart because of what was done to me, not because of who I am." Emily shifted in her seat, adrenaline pumping through her veins. How could someone so wrapped in self-protection twist the reality of someone else's pain? "Stop hiding behind your words and tell the truth," she called out, her voice echoing off the walls. Jake's gaze shifted to Emily, irritation flaring in his eyes. "And you think just yelling is going to change my mind? You weren't there, Emily. You don't know what she was like." Emily stood in defiance, fueled by anger and loyalty. "What I know is that you're trying to use your voice to drown her out. That's the real story." The judge intervened, his voice steady. "We need to focus. Jake, I ask you once more, what do you have to contribute to this case?" He hesitated, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Just that people can't always escape their past. Some things stick with you." Sarah met his gaze steadily, hers unwavering despite the turmoil. "That's true, but that means we fight harder to break free from it. You might think you own my past, Jake, but you're only a chapter. I get to write the ending." A hush fell over the room, the weight of her words hanging palpably in the air. Jake scoffed, but the bravado had faded slightly. "Let us take a break," the judge announced, clearly trying to contain the rising tensions. As the gavel came down, murmurs filled the courtroom, a swirl of opinions and emotions. Emily reached for Sarah's hand, squeezing it tight. "You taught him something today," she said softly, even though fear still clawed at her insides. "You stood your ground." But her heart raced with uncertainty about what would come next. Could they face whatever Jake had left to say? Was her friend truly prepared for the oncoming storm? As they moved to exit the room, Emily felt an intense shift in the air. She knew this was just the beginning of their fight. The truth was unraveling. It was a gamble, and one they had to play carefully. In the corridor, the tension felt thicker still. The final confrontation loomed ahead. Would their brave admission of vulnerability be enough? And would the rest of the world finally see Sarah for who she really was? As Emily and Sarah stepped out into the hallway, the sharp fluorescent lights overhead buzzed like angry bees. The weight of the courtroom felt lighter, but only just. Conversations buzzed around them, fragments of voices gossiping about what had just unfolded. Emily could hear snippets of people's opinions, their judgments floating through the thick air. Moving away from the crowd, Sarah leaned against a wall, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. What if he tries to turn it around again? She asked, a flicker of anxiety clouding her eyes. Then we face it together, Emily replied fervently, hoping to project more strength than she felt. You've already shown them who you are. They saw you stand up, and that matters. Sarah nodded, but the uncertainty danced on her face. It amused Emily how Sarah always managed to mold her trust into a shape that fit snugly against fear. But right now, Emily was worried. Jake wasn't the type to quietly retreat. He had chosen his allies carefully, and she could already feel their judgment lurking like shadows, eager to pounce. We need to come up with a plan, Sarah said, her voice shaky but determined. I won't let him twist this into something it's not. Not again. Let us focus on what you want to say next. What will you say if he throws more accusations? Emily asked, her brow furrowing, trying to manifest a sense of control amid the chaos. Maybe I should talk about the real impact. How it made me feel, you know. Not just the facts. Sarah chewed her lip pensively, her eyes glazing over with memories. You have to be raw, unfiltered, Emily encouraged, every word dripping with conviction. You have to show them the real you, not just the victim, but the warrior. Just then, a heavy-set figure emerged from the throng. It was Jake, his expression a mixed cocktail of arrogance and confusion. He sauntered up, oozing entitlement. Nice speech back there, Sarah, he said, a thin smile curling at his lips. But let us be real. You're just a scared little girl who got lucky once. This isn't over. You'll crumble again. Sarah straightened instinctively, the spark of defiance kindling within her. I'm not scared of you. You think you can dictate my life, but you're wrong. I'm in control now. Emily felt the tremor of Sarah's heat beside her, igniting her own resolve. The birds outside chirped merrily, ignorant of the storm brewing inside the courthouse. Jake laughed, loud enough to turn heads. Control? You'll need more than clichés to rewrite your past. Stop trying to make my pain a punchline, Sarah shot back, her voice steady now. There was a moment where time froze the air thick and taut. Emily felt her heart pound in her chest, each beat drumming louder as it echoed through the tension. This was the moment they had been building toward, a crossroads where truth could shift everything. With a last, dismissive glance, Jake turned away. Good luck, he threw over his shoulder. You'll need it. Luck doesn't even begin to touch what we have, Sarah murmured, her voice trembling but fierce. This is about strength ours. As Emily wrapped her arm around her friend, a sense of solidarity coursed between them. They had come so far, and whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Returning to the courtroom felt like stepping back into a battlefield. The air crackled with anticipation, every set of eyes now focused on them again. Would Sarah's voice echo louder than Jake's ridicule? What if I can't do this? Sarah whispered just before they walked in, her eyes wide with underlying fear. Emily squeezed her hand, an anchor. You've got this, Sarah. Just remember, you're not just telling your story. You're owning it. The gavel slammed down, and silence fell again. The door was closing, but this time, it didn't feel like just another chapter. It felt like the beginning of a confrontation that would define their futures. What would happen when Sarah stood before them again? Would she break through the expectations, or would she give in to Jake's taunts? The tension hung in the air as they prepared for the next wave of challenges. Emily could only hope that the truth they fought for would finally be known. Because this time, it was more than a story, it was about freedom. A battle was brewing within those walls, and it was anyone's guess what the outcome would be. The courtroom door swung open, revealing a space thick with tension, just waiting to explode. Emily and Sarah stepped forward, heartbeats drowning out the muffled murmurs surrounding them. They were the focal point once again, every eye glued to Sarah, who bore the weight of 1,000 expectations on her shoulders. As they moved to their seats, Emily glanced at Sarah. Her friend's face was a mask of determination, but an underlying tremor in her hands betrayed her. Emily wanted to reach out, to tell her everything would be okay, but words felt inadequate. "Okay, let us do this," Sarah whispered, her voice tinged with a defiance that ignited something deep within Emily's soul. Sarah had battled too long to let Jake's taunts define her. As the judge entered, a hush settled over the room. His gavel slammed down again, slicing through the atmosphere, and it began. Sarah straightened, directing her gaze toward the front, where the jury sat, their expressions unreadable. "Ms. Collins," the judge started, his voice steady yet firm. "You may resume your testimony." Sarah took a deep breath, her chest rising, and in that moment, Emily saw a fire ignite behind her eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor." Sarah turned toward the jury, her voice steady. "I want to talk about the real impact of his actions. I spent years feeling trapped not just in my mind, but in my life. Every time I saw him it felt like drowning in darkness." Emily could feel the energy shift. Heads turned, whispers quieted. The weight of Sarah's words hung in the air, palpable and raw. "Jake thought he could control my narrative, but that ends today," Sarah continued, her strength building with every syllable. "He made me feel small, but I'm not ashamed anymore. I didn't crumble because of weakness, I crumbled under the weight of his lies." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Emily caught the glances of jurors, some nodding subtly, others leaning in closer. Sarah was breaking through, she was making them listen. Every insult, every threat, those were shackles. "And yes, they held me down," she said, eyes burning with conviction. "But this is my moment. This is about me standing up, not just for myself but for every woman who sat silent, too scared to fight back." The words flowed like a tide, powerful and unrelenting. Sarah looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the jury. She saw empathy spark a connection of shared pain, resilience blossoming in a place that had previously felt so cold. Jake's expression had shifted from smug amusement to something darker, an embattled glare. The air buzzed with intent, the truth hanging above them like a heavy fog, ready to lift. "Jake, you took my voice but not my spirit. And starting now, I'm reclaiming both." With that, Sarah's voice rang clear, steady and electrifying. As she stood there, stories pouring from her heart, Emily felt her own heart ache with pride. This wasn't just Sarah's fight, it was an awakening, a revolution. But as Sarah finished her story, someone from the back of the courtroom stepped forward, a figure Emily recognized instantly. It was one of Jake's ally, clutching a stack of papers, a chaotic urgency evident in their movements. "Your Honor." The person interrupted, raising their voice to demand attention. "There's evidence that changes everything." Emily's stomach twisted, dread creeping in as she realized their battle wasn't over yet. What would they find? Would this evidence change the narrative again? As silence enveloped the room, both hope and fear clashed within Emily. She grabbed Sarah's hand tightly. They had fought hard, but was it enough? The next move was about to unfold, and everything hung in the balance. Would the truth they fought for finally be revealed, or would another round of shadows rise again? The tension in the room thickened like smoke as everyone waited for the judge to respond. Emily felt her heart racing, pounding against her ribcage. Her grip tightened around Sarah's hand, a lifeline in an ocean of uncertainty. "Objection, Your Honor." Jake's attorney shot back, standing abruptly. "This is an outrageous interruption, and what they're bringing forth is irrelevant." The judge raised an eyebrow, his expression betraying no hint of favoritism. "We shall see," he said, motioning for the figure by the door to approach. As the newcomer advanced, whispers erupted among the spectators, a ripple of anxious curiosity washing over them, the noisy clatter of papers being shuffled punched through the air like bullets. The person's face was flushed, eyes wide with urgency, and in each step, they seemed to carry a world of secrets. "Your Honor, my clients deserve to know everything that has happened here today. This evidence is crucial," they insisted, their voice wavering slightly. "It could prove that Sarah is lying about the entire case." Emily felt her stomach drop. How could it be that after all they shared, someone could try to turn the tide again? A flicker of doubt clouded her thoughts, but then she remembered Sarah's fierce words that had resonated through the courtroom just moments before. They had fought too hard for this. "Proceed," the judge commanded, and with a gesture of his hand, the air shifted like a curtain being drawn aside. The unexpected arrival produced a thick manila envelope, brandishing the words "confidential" across the front. The courtroom leaned in, an assembled task force of nervous anticipation. When the envelope finally opened, the courtroom gasped collectively at whatever lay within. Papers with names and dates, testimony that felt like it could shake the very foundation of their testimony. "Your Honor, these are witness statements that directly contradict Sarah's claims," the figure began, handing over the printed sheets. "They include conversations and interactions between Jake and Sarah, asserting that she manipulated situations to frame him." Emily's breath hitched. The room seemed to darken, as if a storm had gathered just beyond the windows. Sarah turned to look at Emily, her face pale but resolute. "Keep fighting," Emily silently urged her friend, still clasped tightly in her hands. The murmurs in the courtroom rose again, each spectator weighing the implications like a ledger balancing hope against despair. Sarah's audacity had ignited change, but now, new shadows loomed. Emily's heart squeezed as the attorney continued speaking, detailing events that painted Sarah not as a victim, but as an architect of her own misfortunes. "None of this is true," Sarah shouted finally, her voice ringing through the tension. The fire in her had not waned. If anything, it only grew hotter. "I am not the one manipulating anyone. I am standing here, facing facts. It is Jake who has twisted our lives." But Emily could see cracks forming in the armor of the jury. Doubts were planting seeds where once there had been resolve. The warrior spirit in Sarah was stirring against a tide of accusations. "Your Honor, I demand to present my own witnesses." Sarah's voice was a battle cry. The judge glanced at the appointed figures of the jury, who seemed to mull Sarah's bold proclamation over. "Very well. We will recess for 10 minutes. We'll hear any additional testimonies you have, Ms. Collins." Emily's heart raced. Sarah would summon the truth like a phoenix rising from ashes. But in that fleeting moment of hope, doubt gnawed at Emily's insides. What if the truth they uncovered wasn't enough? What if it led them further into the darkness instead of toward the light? As the courtroom buzzed with anxious energy, Emily held on to Sarah's gaze, searching for strength, gathering every drop of hope to fuel the fire. They had battled for this day and now stood at the precipice of the unknown. The courtroom door swung wide, and in stepped someone new, someone Emily had never expected to see again. The air crackled with uncertainty, and she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change yet again. Who was this unexpected ally, and what did they bring with them? The figure stepped forward, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. It was Lisa, Sarah's childhood friend, the one who had always been there during Sarah's darkest moments, the one who bore witness to their shared pain. Lisa's presence filled the room with something both unexpected and powerful. It was as if a spark had been ignited, illuminating all the darkest corners of their shared struggles. "Your Honor," Lisa said, her voice firm yet tender. "I have information that can clarify the truth about Sarah's story. I can't let her fight this battle alone anymore." The audience turned their attention to Lisa, eyes wide, the weight of hope crystallizing with every word she spoke. Emily felt a jolt of energy surge through her as she watched Sarah's expression shift from doubt to fierce appreciation. They were not alone anymore. "Lisa, are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, her voice quivering with emotion. There was an undercurrent of fear. This was the moment for honesty, but honesty came at a cost. "Absolutely," Lisa replied, determination written all over her face. "You taught me how to fight back, how to stand up for what's right. Now let me do the same for you." As she took her place at the stand, Emily could sense an electric tension in the air. Lisa looked around, making eye contact with the jurors. There was a strong belief in her gaze. She was here to reclaim the narrative for her friend. With a nod from the judge, Lisa began, "I was there many times when Jake's actions crossed into abuse. I witnessed the pain it caused Sarah, how it chipped away at her spirit. She was scared and trapped. He made her feel powerless." Emily saw the jurors lean in, engagement growing as Lisa built the foundation of truth. Every word carved a path through the shadows that Jake had cast. "Sarah never lied," Lisa stated defiantly. "She fought to keep her story alive when he was methodically trying to erase it. She wasn't manipulating anyone, she was surviving." As Lisa spoke, Sarah's shoulders eased, visibly relaxing under the weight of truth. Emily's chest swelled with pride. This was a sisterhood, a bond forged through struggles now coming to light. The opposing attorney attempted to undermine Lisa's testimony, eager to demonize the messenger. "You think your friendship gives you the right to speak for her? You're just another victim living in her shadow." "No," Lisa shot back, unwavering. "I'm not here to overshadow Sarah. I'm here to amplify her voice, to prove that her experience is valid. Jake's lies are the only shadows here." The courtroom buzzed as whispers of solidarity spread through the jury, fueling belief. Emily could feel it, hope blossoming like spring after a harsh winter. The scales of justice were slowly tilting, favoring truth over manipulation. Seeing the audience's reaction tugged at her heart. "You're doing it, Sarah," Emily thought, eyes locked on her friend as she gathered strength. With the momentum building inside, Sarah rose again, injecting her voice into the conversation. "Lisa is right. I didn't just survive, I learned. It made me stronger. I refuse to allow what happened to me to define me anymore." The courtroom erupted with encouragement. Even a few jurors exchanged glances that spoke volumes: admiration, respect. Faces once hostile now softened, and the tide appeared to shift. As the opposing attorney stood, visibly rattled, he scrambled for a way to maintain control. "But the evidence against you, what will you say to the claims that you forged connections to trap Jake? That you initiated some of these interactions? Those actions were based on survival tactics. I didn't forge connections, he abused them. Labels 1 sterilize the truth. My life isn't a narrative you've concocted. It's raw, it's real, and I refuse to hide it anymore." Emily felt tears stinging her eyes, a wave of catharsis washing over her. There it was, the courage and determination that both women had fueled, not just for themselves but for countless others who had ever felt unheard. The bass of the gavel reverberated through the courtroom. "I believe we're ready for deliberation," the judge announced, eyes scanning the room, assessing the impact of testimony upon the gathered bodies. But before the trial could draw to a close, a silence swept over the audience as Sarah turned to address her community. "To every person affected by violence, by words that cut deeper than any blade, know that you're not alone. We are many. We stand together." The crowd erupted. Emily's heart soared, enveloped by an overwhelming wave of emotion. They weren't fighting against a singular voice but instead taking a stand as a collective movement. It echoed through everyone, resonating with the raw power of truth. Jake's presence, once looming and oppressive, felt diminished. He looked like a shadow now cast aside by the powerful light of realization. Victory wasn't just within reach, it was a heartbeat away. As the judge called for order and declared the possibility of the jury's deliberation, Emily grasped Sarah's hand tighter. Fear still lingered, but it was different this time. It was blended with hope, belief, and a promise that the struggle for justice came with a price, but through the turmoil, they had discovered their resilience. This was their beginning, a new story, one that stretched through the darkness into the fertile soil of power, voice, and transformation. Sarah and Emily stood together ready for the resolution. The audience was not just spectators, they were witnesses to change, and with this last round of testimony, Emily felt light a glimmer of victory as they stepped into the future, hopeful for what awaited them on the other side. A future born from courage, one where silence was no longer an option. Now more than ever, they believed every story matters. Encourage the moment of change. Don't wait another second. Subscribe immediately to stay updated on life-changing stories. Hit that like button now to support this powerful journey. Comment below how you felt about this transformative ending. And share this with at least 5 friends who need to hear this inspiring message of strength and courage. Real change starts here, and you can be a part of it.